Hello, this is Tony Blazer back with another video here for the Motocross Vault on YouTube. For this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look back at the 10 best looking Honda motocross bikes of all time, in my opinion. We're going to look back, I'm going to rate them from 10 to 1, and what I'm going to do is look at all of them going back from the original ELSINORE in 73 up through the 2019 CRF models. Again, this is a very subjective list. It's completely my opinion on which ones are the best looking. I did a basically best looking bikes a little while back. I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago for Pulp MX, and I think for this one I'm just going to limit it to Honda. I plan on doing one for all the major brands. Give you my opinion. Again, feel free to tell me what a moron I am if you disagree, or let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But I hope everybody enjoys it. Again, I'm going to rank them from 1 to 10. 10 being my least favorite, and then 1 obviously being number 1. So I hope you enjoy it, and here we go. Coming in at number 10 on my list, we have the 1978 CR250R Elsinore. When this bike debuted in 1978, it was quite a departure from the machines that Honda was producing prior to this. In 73, they had basically introduced America to the joys of Japanese motocross racing by coming out with a really competitive machine, the original CR250M Elsinore. That bike, when it was introduced, was inexpensive, reliable, had great performance. It really was a revelation compared to some of the finicky European bikes that had come before it. Honda wasn't the first Japanese manufacturer to produce a motocross bike. Suzuki and Kawasaki had them beat by several years in that category, but they really were the first one to do it right, on the production level at least. The original Elsinore was quite a revelation, but quickly it was surpassed by other vehicles in its class. The YZ, when it was introduced, was twice the price, but offered a lot more performance. And when Suzuki finally got their stuff going right in 76 with the RMs, the CR was quickly left in its wake. In 78, though, Honda came back punching with this all-new Works replica. The R in the name of the CR250R stood for replica, a Works replica this year. And this was the first CR to bear that name. Before this, they were the CRM. So this was really kind of a revelation in terms of performance for Honda. The bike had twice the suspension travel of the machine it replaced. Much higher performance. The engine was super compact. Basically looked just like one of their Works bikes. And I had this. I probably have a soft spot for this motorcycle on the list because it was my first real motocross bike. Like I said, I had a 78. In 79, the vehicle's very similar. The bike doesn't look much different. But in 1980, they went to a FIM mandated number plate that probably does look a little better. The number plate extends farther back. It was so scores could read it easier. But I don't really care for the plastic tank. The lines of that plastic tank are not as attractive to me. There's something just really gorgeous to me about this motorcycle. All that red. I love the red engine. I was kind of bummed out when they went away from the red engine on the CRs. This bike is, simplistic and not really covered in stickers or bodywork or anything. It's just kind of a simple looking motorcycle, but has a classic design I always really liked. I know for some people they may prefer the looks of the original just because it was such a classic, the 73, 74 models. But I never really liked the silver that much. It wasn't really my thing, the silver and green look. I much prefer the kind of fire engine red that Honda's known for. And I think this was the first bike that really kind of caught my imagination and got me loving the red brand. All right, in ninth place we have the 2006 Honda CRF 250R. I had the first version of this bike in 2004. I traded in my 2002 CRF 450 on it. When it came out, I had to have it. I loved the new body work. Thought it looked really sleek, a little cleaner than my 02 looked. But I picked this one over it because of one reason, the twin exhaust. Even though I've always thought it was kind of silly, more of a marketing thing. I know Honda made a big deal about it was going to affect the roll and yaw of the bike and yada yada yada, make it handle better, this, that, or the other. When they first talked about this coming out, I thought it would probably make the bike quieter. That made sense because the four strokes always were just too darn loud. And my first thought was, okay, great, Honda's going to figure out a way to make the bike quieter while still having good performance. But interestingly, the '06 model with the twin exhaust was actually a little bit louder. So that didn't really work out. It clearly was a marketing ploy, but it does look cool. Like I said, I always like this bodywork. Good looking motorcycle, and the twin exhausts really set it off a little bit. I think all of these mid 2000s CRFs are pretty good looking bikes, but for my money, that twin pipe really does make the difference. In eighth place, we have another one of my favorite motorcycles in the Honda stable, a bike I own myself, the 1990 CR250R. I actually had all three of the 90 models. I had a 125, 250, and 500, and loved all of them. This was a year where Honda went back to the traditional kind of early 80s Honda orange, that kind of an orange mist color from the blood red they used in 88 and 89. Um, I know some people didn't really care for the switch to the white frame. I loved it at the time. Like I said, I really dig the looks of this bike. Kind of pains me to put it so down far on the list here, but looking at it objectively, I don't think the lines of the side panel are quite as neat as what they had in '89 or later models. Kind of a strange look in some ways. I do love the monochromatic look. I love the orange. I love the fact that the bike is very kind of a plain. Maybe not plain's not the word, but it's not festooned with a lot of crazy graphics. This is just before things kind of went off the rails and they started putting tiger stripes and going purple and everything else. This is like the last year for the restrained look uh, on the CRs, and I just think it's a clean looking motorcycle. I had one, like I said, back in the day. I just restored one like 2 years ago. I bought one and restored it and made it into a like a stand replica, and it was a good bike then. It's great looking bike now. I wish I could put it higher on the list, but there's a lot of really great motorcycles to choose from, and I have to leave it here in eighth, even though it pains me to do so. One of the neat things about this bike too was the ad that year. In 1990, they released a really cool ad talking about how the CR was an all-new breed, and it had a like a bulldog painted that new old Honda orange on the first page. It was like a four-page thing, two-page layout on each side, and the first one had the like the I guess it's a bulldog. I'm not really a dog person, but and then on page two you saw the new CR. So one of the iconic ads I think of the early '90s, and definitely one of my favorite all-time looking Honda motorcycles. All right, if there's any machine that's going to get me hate mail and angry tweets on the list, it's going to be this. It's my number seven pick for the best looking Honda CR motocross bike, the 1994 CR250R. In truth, I actually quite like the looks of this particular model. Um, in '92, I really hated this new look. I didn't like the switch from the orange red to the new nuclear red. Uh, I hated the white airbox. I didn't like the white tank. I just wasn't a fan of the whole look. In '93, there were a few improvements. They deepened the red. Their first gen '92 model was very pink. The original shade of nuclear red was like kind of a more of a neon pink than almost a red, and it faded quickly. In '93, they added a little more red to the mix, and in '94 they changed up the color ever so slightly again. It's a little more deeper red, and they also improved the graphics, in my opinion, of this run between '92 and '96, where they didn't have a Honda wing on the shroud, which I definitely don't approve of. But if I had to choose one of these models without the CR on the shroud, this one would definitely be my favorite. I really like that yellow logo with the blue outline. It was really bright, particularly in contrast to the 92 and 93 logos, which were pretty blatant. 92 is just like a white CR against a red background. Almost looks like a first grader drew it. The 93 design, kind of cartoony, but kind of bland too. It's just white and like blue. At least the yellow kind of golden CR pops against everything. It definitely stands out. I'm always more of a fan of the Honda wing in there somewhere. I don't really care for the look of the new CRF logo on the 19s and stuff much either. But if I had to go with the mid 90s one, this is definitely my favorite. I also prefer this side panel design to the later ones. The 95 and 96 model had a redesigned side panel that to me looked more like an afterthought. It didn't flow with the bodywork at all. It was more practical. It did have more room for the actual numbers, but aesthetically, I don't think it looks as good as 94. And again, if I had to pick one of these, this would be my favorite. Again, I know a lot of people probably would want this to be higher on the list, 90s nostalgia being what it is, but for me at least, I think there are better looking bikes to come. All right, next up in sixth place, we have the highest placing four-stroke on my list, the 2009 Honda CRF 450R. This motorcycle had the unenviable role of replacing one of the most popular Honda motorcycles of all time, the 2008 CRF 450R, widely considered the best four-stroke of its era, one of the best motocross bikes of all time by a lot of people. I had the '05 model, and it was a phenomenal motorcycle. Really, really great machine in pretty much every way. This '09 eclipsed it really in one way, which was styling, in my opinion. I really love the lines of this. The tail section, by far the cleanest of the modern four strokes, in my opinion. I like all the body work, the look of it. It really freshened up the look of the CRF in a way that was an improvement to my eye. The bike itself wasn't great. This was the first year they went to fuel injection on the CRF, and it turned out to be way slower than the carbureted '08 model. The handling was a little bit weird. They really shrunk the chassis down this year to make the bike feel smaller. It definitely was lighter, but it had kind of a strange weight balance, and a lot of people felt like the handling was not improved over '08. The bike would end up being very successful a couple years later. They got a lot of the bugs worked out of it. But in terms of styling, I really did love this bike. It was a good looking bike. The factory ones look very similar to this. I know Chad Reed raced one, and I love the looks of his 2.2 machines. Definitely a good looking motorcycle. Maybe not the best motorcycle on the list in terms of actual performance, but one of my favorites and worthy of the number 6 position on my list. All right, now we're getting into the real heavy hitters. At number 5 on my list, we have the all new 1998 Honda CR 125. In '98, this was a highly anticipated machine. The early '90s CR 125s were really, really fast. They were great bikes. They didn't always handle the best, but they were known for having the most powerful motors in the class. In '96, the CR had finally been eclipsed by Yamaha, and a lot of people thought after the '97 redesign of the 250, they would really come out swinging in '98 with an all-new 125. Unfortunately, somehow the switch to the aluminum chassis messed up the power on the CR. The motor wasn't much different, but something to do with the airbox design or something internally really kind of neutered the power on this thing. I own the very similar '99 model, brand new, and I can tell you from personal experience this thing was just dog slow. It was painful. In spite of that, however, I think it's a gorgeous motorcycle. I do prefer the '98 design over the very similar '97 CR250 look. The addition of the red rear fender, I think, cleans up the styling a little bit, and I do like the CR logo on the seat is a nice contrast. The styling on the shroud as well, I really like this year. I love when they went to the yellow Honda wing. Bringing back the wing was a great move in '97, and '98 kept that going. It's a really good looking motorcycle overall, I think. Like I said, the styling of the bike is not really indicative of its performance, but I think it's a good looking motorcycle, even today. Definitely that big aluminum frame, although it looks massive by modern standards, they kind of toned it down over the years. It was so mind blowing in the late '90s. I remember when I first saw the '97, I was like, holy crap, I had to have that thing. And then turned out that bike wasn't that great either. Definitely much like the '09 Honda CR, the '98 125 and 250 were great looking motorcycles that didn't really live up to their looks on the track. In the fourth position, we have a machine that I had real misgivings about when it was originally launched, but I've grown to really love over time, the 1988 Honda CR 250R. In 1988, Honda made the bold decision to retire the most successful machine in motocross and introduce an all-new CR250R. The bike was completely redesigned from the ground up. It featured a brand new suspension system. It featured a mild tweak to the motor, but a major redesign to the bodywork and chassis. The 88 bike had much slimmer ergonomics, a new lowboy exhaust, which kind of routed the pipe down low so it wouldn't roast your leg, and also lowered the center of gravity. Visually, the bike was very different than the previous machine, not just because of the bodywork, but as you can see here, the entire CR line got a revamp with a new coat of bright red paint. Personally, I wasn't real psyched for this change in 88. I love the orangish red, as I said earlier. Love the blue seat. Just really was a fan of that whole styling trend in the mid 80s when Honda went to that color combo. This 88 bike looked bizarre at the time to me. It definitely was a big difference, but like I said, over time, I really appreciate this. Is now one of my favorite color combos. It's monochromatic, as you can see. They probably saved a few dollars by not painting the front number plate. And they also took the paint off the motor this year. The 88 cylinders were silver. The styling on the bike, like I said, is really cool. It still looks great now. Kind of reminds me of a Ferrari Testarossa, another kind of icon of the 80s. Great looking bike and overall. The reason I didn't really rate it any higher on the list is a couple of reasons. I did not really care for this CR logo when they went away from having the Honda on the shroud to the Honda on the seat. I know it's a nitpick, but I preferred the logo flipped around. I never really liked this kind of design. I also, the red fork boots look good on there, but I think the upside down forks on the 89 kind of rated a little higher in terms of the styling. But that's a personal choice. It's still a great looking motorcycle. At this point, clearly we're splitting hairs here. Any of the top four bikes could probably be switched in order, but for me at least, this one rates number 4 on the list of best looking Honda motocross bikes. All right, we're up to the top 3. At number 3 on my list, we have the 1986 Honda CR250R. All right, this was a tough one for me. The top 3, I love obviously all of them. They're beautiful bikes, every one, and I really struggled as to whether this one would be number 1, 2, or 3. In the end, I settled on 3rd, but like I said, with the previous bike, it really could easily have been the number 1. 86 was a really important year for Honda. This was the first year they added the Honda PowerPort to the motor. Really made a huge difference in the performance of the CR250. And in 85, the bike had been a dog. It was just not very powerful. It had that ATAC motor on it. They had had issues with the 84 motors blowing up, so they kind of detuned the 85, and it just wasn't much a performer. For 86, they totally redesigned the engine and came out with an awesome motorcycle. They also added cartridge forks. This is the first year for that. And this bike just dominated. It dominated the shootouts, dominated the races with Rick Johnson on them, David Bailey, and Johnny O'Mara. They just killed it that year. The bike was just phenomenal. Performance-wise, it smoked all the other comers. I do love the looks of this bike. In terms of appearance, it really isn't a whole lot different than the 85 model here. 86 added like I said, the gold rims, changed the logo slightly on the shroud, and had a different seat logo. But all those little things really make a huge difference, mainly the rims particularly. The logo I do like a lot better for 86. And again, the gold rims just make the bike set off. It was a phenomenal looking bike then, and it still looks great now. I never had this bike. I never got to own one. I did get to ride one a couple times. It was a really smooth electric power band on it. Great, smooth, easy to use engine. I had a couple of these other CRs later with this motor, and it was a phenomenal engine. Great looking bike, and definitely one of the best years for Honda. All right, at number 2, we have another motorcycle that I owned and loved, the 1987 CR125R. Much like my previous pick, I kind of debated and went back and forth a little bit on whether to put this ahead of the 86 model CR, but in the end, I do prefer the 87's looks ever so slightly. This was an all-new bike in 87. The 250 wasn't nearly as renovated, but the 125 got an all-new motor, got the cartridge forks, did not have them in 86 on the 125. This was a phenomenal bike. It was rocket fast for its time. Really about the only thing it had was the shock was only okay. And the motor did have some reliability issues this year. They had some problems with wrist pins lacking oil and letting go. Famously, Larry Brooks had that happen on his bike when he was winning a national. I never had any problem with mine, though. It was a great bike for me. Love the looks of this thing. This is the first year they put the seat all the way up the tank. Even though the layout's not as slim as the 88 CR 250, it did allow you to get a little farther forward. The new ATAC motor this year had a lot more top end than the 86. 86 was a great bike too, but the motor ran very differently. In 87, you get the addition of a rear disc brake, you get the cartridge forks, you get the all new layout. I love the CR logo and the blue seat this year. I love the 87 graphics too on all of them, really, the 500 and the 250. Just a good looking bike. Kept the gold rims. This is the last year for my beloved gold rims. Just a classic design. Mickey Diamond piloted this thing to his second 125 national title. Rick Johnson dominated on the 250 and 500 version of it. It was just a great year for Honda, great year for looks. And like I said, this is kind of why the 88 CRs were such a shock to me. I love the looks of this thing so much. I love that color combo. It's just so bright with the blue and the orange, and then they went and went all monochromatic. Like I said, in hindsight, that's a good look, but at the time, I was not a fan. All right, time for my pick for the number one best looking Honda motocross bike of all time, the 1989 Honda CR 250R. Much like the difference between the 86 and 87 CRs, the difference here between the 88 and 89 models are not huge. The main thing is the upside down forks on the 250 and 500 and the updated graphics. But for me, it makes a pretty big difference. The basic bodywork is the same because I said it was all new in 88. For 89, they added the upside down forks and revised the graphics. They had a new Honda wing, my favorite design, the one that would go on into the 90s a little bit there. Kind of a more, I guess, less cartoony font. I don't really know how to describe it, but I do prefer that look. I love the font of the 250R in the Honda that year. I like the CR on the seat is kind of a throwback to the 87. Nice looking graphics. Like I said, by 89, that whole monochromatic look had really grown on me, and I was getting used to it. Great looking bike. I love the styling. Like I said, this bodywork is clean and kind of timeless. Really didn't wear with age in terms of the looks of it. I think it looks as good now as it did in 89. Rick Johnson was on his way to winning the Supercross title in 89 on this thing. He won the first 5 rounds in a row before having a kind of a tragic end to his career, basically. At Gatorback, he ended up having his wrist landed on by Danny Storbeck and pretty much ruined things for him, opening the door for Jeff Stanton to come through and take the 89 CR to the 250 Supercross and 250 outdoor national titles. This bike itself was a rocket. It was phenomenal motor on it, great handling, terrible forks. After having great suspension in the mid 80s, 86, 87 had the best suspension. 89 they really screwed the pooch with this new upside down forks. These new Shawas were terrible. I mean they were just terrible is the only way to describe it. But the rest of the bike was phenomenal. It's a really popular bike for people to restore now because it has such a classic look to it. The styling on this would basically be used on the 500 until its demise in 2001. They'd basically keep this look for that whole decade. The 90 bike went back to the orange, as I had mentioned earlier. Probably just, much as I love that motorcycle, just not as good looking a motorcycle overall. Alright, so there we have it. My top 10 picks for the best looking Honda motocross bikes of all time. I'm sure some people agree with a few of these, probably disagree with a lot more. I would love to know your thoughts on which bikes you agree with and don't agree with. So feel free to leave me some comments in the area below, or hit me up on Twitter at Tony Blazer, or on Instagram also at Tony Blazer. That's TonyBlazer. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon. Peace.